Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of anger. This month, we are focusing on an emotion that I think is really misunderstood and one that I think that people try to get the most grasp of and understanding and control of. And I think it's very misunderstood because all emotions are valid. So last week we talked about what is anger and some descriptive words that we may use for anger. And I think that it's very important for us to understand our own vocabulary when it comes to an emotion, because when we say those words, it can give us a hint of how intensely we feel them. Right? So we went through some words that we may use for anger. We put them on a scale, an intensity scale. And I highly recommend that you do this for yourself so that when you do say a word that, is a part of an emotion, is a descriptive word for emotion, I think it's really important to understand where you're at in that moment in an intensity, okay? And we also talked about body sensations that we feel as well. So if you haven't watched last week, I highly recommend you go back and get yourself an understanding of the words that you use when you are angry and have a better idea of those intensity monitors, those, markers of how intense you're feeling an emotion. Okay, so this week we're jumping in to one of my absolute favorite coping skills. It's called check the facts. And I think it's a very important skill because I'm going to give you an understanding of what secondary emotions are. And so when you feel a primary emotion that maybe is very uncomfortable, scary, that kind of thing, and your mind jumps to another emotion that they feel is more in control or safer. That is what a secondary emotion is. And I'll give you an example. For me, whenever I feel fear, my brain immediately jumps to anger as a secondary emotion because fear is really scary, right? Fear is scary. And so I also, as a child, I was unable to show fear because that was something that my abuser would definitely want to see. So I learned to pull back and not show my fear, and then my brain would just jump to anger because, again, it felt safer. It felt more in control than fear. So that's why we do a checking the facts coping skill when it comes to anger. I think it's really important that we do it. I don't think I'm the only one who jumps from one uncomfortable emotion like fear or sadness because maybe we're in grief. And as a lot of people say when they are grieving, one of the biggest steps is anger. And I think that may be that trick that our mind pulls on us, instead of feeling the primary emotion, we're feeling that secondary emotion. So let's talk about check the facts. There's a long list here that we go through, but it really is very simple, okay? So we started out with what happened or what will happen. So you can use this in something that's already happened, a situation that's already happened, or you can use it for something that you know is going to happen and you have to prepare for it, okay? So what happened or what will happen? Let me use my favorite example of going through checking the facts, okay? So I'm driving on the highway and suddenly this car speeds right next to me and pulls ahead of me really quick and cuts me off short. And I actually have to hit the brakes to make sure that I don't hit them, okay? That's what happened. What do I think happened? Well, I think that this person drove really fast around me and cut me off because they wanted to be ahead of me, right? Will this really hurt me? Well, in the moment, it definitely felt like it would hurt me. I thought that we might get into an accident. And what is the worst that can happen? Get into an accident, right? This is the worst thing that could happen. We get into an accident, someone gets really hurt, okay? Does how I feel right now actually fit with the situation? Well, let's see. What am I feeling? Car cut me off. I had to hit my brakes and I was afraid. of getting into an accident. So what was it that I was feeling in that moment? Was it the anger I'm feeling right now at that person? And now I'm, yelling at them, screaming, and, maybe even getting a little close to them, getting upset, which I don't recommend. Okay. So does how I feel right now actually fit with the situation? Well, like we said, I was afraid we were going to get into an accident. I was in fear, and that was the emotion that I'm fitting in this situation. But I may be feeling anger, and I probably am feeling anger because, again, I go quick from fear to anger. As in road rage incidences, that's something that happens quite often, right? Jumping from fear to immediately anger, and you're road raging. Okay. What is the emotion I am feeling? Well, I'm feeling really mad. I'm angry. I'm peed off, right? Intensity probably really high in that moment. I'm really angry. What prompted me to feel this emotion? Well, there was that cutoff and that fear that I felt that we would get into an accident. Check for extremes and judgments. So this is like, are you, you're using anger right now as the emotion that you're feeling. The extreme of that feeling. Is it really necessary to feel that angry about what happened, right? So you're really checking yourself. Checking like, really, is this worth it? Is this highly intense anger worth it right now? Your chest is probably beating so hard, and maybe your ears and your face are really hot. Is this worth it? What is the interpretation of the facts? The facts of the matter is the person flew right next to me and cut me off, and that happened, and I was scared that we were going to get into an accident. Does how I feel now actually fit with the situation? So if I'm feeling that anger, does the anger really fit that situation that happened? Sure. This is how most road rages happen. Somebody does something silly or, something very, harmful. And, the person who is the recipient of it gets extremely angry. But what was the first thing that you were feeling in that moment? You were feeling fear. So what we need to do is focus on the fear so that we can calm ourselves down, okay? Not be chasing the other person because of the anger, and sitting back, getting back into the proper way of driving, which is, in a reasoned state, in a reasoned mind, so that we don't get into accidents. That person, yes, did something that was not in reason mind. They probably were doing an emotion mind. They were sick and tired of going slower than they were, and they decided to go around you and cut you off. That was their own emotion. We need to sit back and remind ourselves of what happened and what we need to do to stay safe, right? This is a pretty, generic kind of example too, because I think it happens with a lot of different things. We feel fear a lot in our lives, and we hate fear. Fear is so uncomfortable that we want to feel something different that's in control for ourselves. And that many times is anger, even though anger can get very much out of control, and hence road raging. So I hope that example helped to understand what checking the facts is. It's basically figuring out the situation without judgment, just looking straight on at the facts of the case and deciding what is the emotion that is appropriate for that situation. So I hope that helped. I think that it can help a lot of people to better understand their anger, is if they're looking at a situation and they realize that it was actually a different emotion. And that emotion caused your brain to flip to anger, okay? If we look at our primary emotion, we can better understand what we need to do for ourselves. So that is checking the facts. I think it's an extremely good, coping skill for us to all figure out in our lives. Use it. I use it a lot because, like I said, I jump from primary to secondary emotions, which is usually anger, very often. And if that feels, similar to yourself in your own experiences, sit down and, if you've been in a situation and a situation is coming up that is causing you to feel anger, write it out. What is the situation? What do I think will happen in that situation? Is the emotion that I'm feeling right now the one that actually fits with this situation that will happen? So you can go into a situation with an appropriate coping skill for the emotion you should be feeling in that moment. Hope this helps. I will see you guys again next week, and there'll be another coping skill for anger. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.